Dr. Wallach is an expert on nutrition and longevity and is the famed author of the audio message, Dead Doctors Don't Lie, which has been heard by more than 50 million people. Get ready to learn and to laugh as Dr. Wallach shares some important facts that could very well save your life. And now, here is Dr. Joel Wallach.
Since most of you heard the tape, Dead Doctors Don't Lie, I don't have to give a lot of introduction to myself other than to remind you the thing that makes my view different on health, I think, is that I'm a veterinarian as well as a physician. And in veterinary medicine, we don't have health insurance for animals like we do people. And if we were to use a human healthcare type of system for animals or livestock, it'd be sticker shock for you. Your hamburger would cost you $275 a pound. A boneless, skinless chicken breast would be $450 a pound. A dozen eggs would be $50 just to pay for the health care. So we learned a long time ago in the animal industry that we could keep the price of animal products such as meat and dairy and poultry and eggs down to where the average American could afford to eat them every day simply by eliminating health care cost. We do this in animals with simple little nutritional formulas, and that's why we have mouse pellets and rat pellets and hamster pellets and gerbil pellets and guinea pig pellets and rabbit pellets. We have canned and dried dog and cat food. We have pig pellets and sheep pellets and horse pellets and calf pellets and dairy pellets and ferret pellets and duck pellets and turkey pellets and trout pellets and catfish pellets and monkey pellets and pigeon pellets. I mean, every kind of animal you can think of that's been domesticated or used as a pet or a laboratory animal, we have pellets for. And the reason why we put animal feeds or animal rations into a pelletized form is so that every mouthful is perfect. Even the stupidest animal in the group gets a perfect diet. They can't sort through and just eat only the sunflower seeds or the raisins. Every mouthful is perfect. And we do that to standardize production. And it's been a real blessing for the agricultural industry. We were so successful that over the last 75 years, we were able to eliminate 900 different diseases. We've doubled and tripled lifespans of animals with these simple little nutritional formulas. And as a veterinarian, it always was kind of interesting to me that we didn't use that same technology for people. We only spent $100 billion figuring all this out for animals over a 75-year period, which is nothing, as you will see tonight, compared to what we spend for human health on a yearly basis. So it's a pittance to eliminate 900 different diseases in animals. Well, one of the things, before I became a physician, I was involved with a big research project with Marlin Perkins from the old Mutual of Omaha Wild Kingdom show. How many remember Marlin Perkins? Great gentleman. And I was really, really honored that he would think of me as a wildlife pathologist. I was in Africa actually doing conservation work, and he sent me a telegram, invited me back to the States in the mid-'60s because he had gotten a $7.5 million grant from the National Institutes of Health. And this was to study pollution in the environment and the world ecology. And my job on the project was to do autopsies of animals that died of natural causes in the big zoos around the United States, because big zoos tended to be associated with big cities. And if there was any pollution problems going on in the cities, there was bound to be an animal in the zoo population that would be sensitive to the pollution. And we could use that animal much like the old coal miners used to use canaries. You know, they'd take the canary down to the mine, and if a little gas or methane would leak into the mine, the canaries were much more sensitive than the men, and they would drop off the perch and die long before the men were in danger of blowing up or suffocating. So that was the purpose of the study. Well, to make a long story short, over some years I had done 17,500 autopsies on over 454 species of animals and 3,000 human beings for comparison. And what I learned, ladies and gentlemen, was that every animal and every human being that dies of natural causes dies of a nutritional deficiency disease. I'm going to repeat that because that's a very profound observation. Every animal and every human being that dies of natural causes dies of a nutritional deficiency disease. And of course, that was poo-pooed by many medical experts back then, because how could anybody die of a nutritional disease in America, right? There's no evidence to support the claim that we can prevent and cure diseases with vitamins and minerals. Raise your hand if you ever heard some version of that. No evidence to support the claim you can prevent and cure diseases with vitamins and minerals. Doctors say that, experts say that, professors say it, bureaucrats say that, everybody says that. Well, how many of you have ever heard of scurvy? Raise your hand. Sure, you know you can prevent and cure scurvy with vitamin C? How many of you have heard of rickets? Raise your hand. You know you can prevent and cure rickets with vitamin D? How many of you have heard of goiter? Raise your hand. You know you can prevent and cure goiter with iodine and copper and selenium? How many of you have heard of anemia? Raise your hand. Golly gee, you know you can prevent and cure anemia with iron and copper and folic acid and vitamin B12? And what about things like beriberi with congestive heart failure? You know you can prevent and cure that with thiamine or vitamin B1? And what about pellagra with all the emotional stuff and schizophrenia and diarrhea and all the skin diseases that go along with pellagra? You can prevent and cure that with vitamin B3 or niacin. And all the essential nutrients are called essential nutrients because if you don't have enough, you get diseases. If you get the disease, you take the nutrient, it goes away. So any doctor, any expert, any bureaucrat, any professor, anybody who says there's no evidence to support the claim you can prevent and cure diseases with vitamins and minerals is a fool. And you don't want to have a fool for a doctor. That's the last person you want to have as a fool as a doctor, right? Diabetes. An epidemic disease in the United States. There's 1 million new cases of diabetes every year. There's 32 million diabetics as we speak right now in America. 30 million of the 32 million diabetics are adult-onset type 2 diabetics. They make up the bulk of the diabetic population. And adult-onset type 2 diabetics make more insulin than non-diabetics. There's not an insulin problem with them. And usually if you're asking about insulin, say, well, I've got insulin. How can I be a diabetic? And so doctors say, well, you've got insulin-resistant diabetes. It's not working. The reason why it's not working is you're deficient in 2 trace minerals, chromium and vanadium, and their cofactors necessary for them to work, which are required by your insulin to work in your body. You can make tons of insulin, but if you don't have those trace minerals, your insulin's not going to work. We learned in 1957 that we could prevent and cure adult-onset type 2 diabetes in laboratory animals, pet animals, and farm animals by giving them these 2 trace minerals and their cofactors. This lay dormant for 20 years in human medicine until 1977 when they found out that they could give intravenous chromium and vanadium and their cofactors to people who had diabetes, and they were unconscious from head injuries. They were in a coma. And they were miraculously cured by giving them intravenously these trace minerals and their cofactors. Now you can't say that, oh, well, they just believed that they were going to get cured because they were going to get cured because they're in a coma. They didn't know what was going on. Now, how come your doctor doesn't tell you this stuff? I mean, it's been proven over and over and over in animals, been proven over and over and over in people. It's been published in every big medical journal in America and in the world. It sort of comes through every couple of years as renewed, people look at it. It's not like it's a mystery. Every doctor knows this. Why don't doctors tell you this? Well, if a doctor took the less than 2 minutes that I just shared with you, this information, he might get $80 for a long visit, an extended visit, instead of $50 for a standard visit. Make an extra $30. According to the GAO, the General Accounting Office, which is the budget watchdog for the U.S. Congress, your doctor makes, over the 25 to 40 years a diabetic lives after diagnosis, your doctor makes $750,000 for every diabetic patient. So why would he take $30 when he can make $750,000? And most people say, well, my doctor belongs to my church. I got to believe in him. Well, don't let that protect you. Even members of the mafia go to church, right? So I wouldn't bet on that one. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, 100 years ago, Americans were eating 1/2 pound of sugar per person per year. 1/2 pound of sugar per person per year. Today, 100 years later, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Americans are eating 157 pounds of sugar per person per year, or now we're eating 1/2 pound a day. So in 100 years, we've gone from 1/2 pound of sugar per person per year to 1/2 pound of sugar per person per day. That, plus the deficiency of these nutrients in our food, has resulted in this epidemic of diabetes. Do you think our genetics has changed that much? I don't think so. If you look in the book Rare Earths Forbidden Cures, one of our books, the guy who's doing all this study on these 2 trace minerals back in the 1950s, actually, Dr. Walter Mertz, went back into the 1940s and began to look at chromium levels in American blood, and he found out there was a big range in 1948, micrograms per liter of parts per billion, 28 to 1,000. In 1971, it dropped to 13. In 72, it dropped to 10. In 73, our chromium levels in our blood dropped to 4.7 to 5.1. In 74, it dropped to 0.73 to 1.6. In 78, it dropped to 0.16. Is it going up or down? It's dropping like a rock. Well, in 1980, it went up 3 times over 1978 values to 0.43. Why did that happen? Remember 1977? They were publishing all these papers on how chromium and vanadium was good for you. And so everybody was taking chromium and vanadium. They were running to health food stores and taking it. And so everybody's blood levels of chromium and vanadium went up. But because they couldn't cure diabetes with chromium and vanadium without all those other cofactors, in 1985 it went back down to 0.13 because people got frustrated because it wouldn't work if you just use those 2 trace minerals without the other cofactors. So between not having enough of these nutrients, the chromium and vanadium and their cofactors in our food anymore, and eating all this sugar, More sugar, less chromium, vanadium. We have an epidemic of adult onset type 2 diabetes.